사방팔방.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Korean Always podcast. Today, we're going to be talking all things output.
First of all, I suppose we could talk about our experiences with output in general. So I'm going to ask Adamola first. Have you got any sort of interesting experiences that the viewers might find, useful to their learning? Yeah.
You know, when you say that. So as for output, before I got into Immersion, I was doing a lot of hello talk, like texting people all the time. That's what I was doing for like a solid month before I discovered Immersion. So I hit that point, I was just outputting a lot, just always like, oh, let me try and output. But the problem with that was I was always just using a translator to like translate like stuff that I didn't know and be like, oh, let me try and do that. So that's what I did. But then after I discovered Immersion, I was like, okay, I need to chill on output. But when I did that, I still had a couple friends that I had like met through Hello Talk, and then I've been texting them through Instagram. So throughout that time, even though I was immersing, every couple of months I would kind of text my friends and they'd text me, and then I'd be using Korean like that. And for the most part, I was doing that. But one experience that I had was like 3 months into immersion. So there's Migaku.
3 months.
Migaku is this about 3 months in.
Wow.
Migaku, they had released their program for their browser extension through Patreon.
Yeah.
And there was this one Korean guy that was looking to like install it. They're like, oh my gosh, I need help. And I think I don't remember if it was you that sent them to me.
Is that Zelkova?
Yeah, it was Zelkova.
Yeah,
Zelkova. So you sent Zelkova, and then he was like, oh, I need help installing it. And I was using only Korean to help him install it. And we finished, he installed it, he got it all done. He was like, thank you so much. And I was like, well, thank you. That was the first time I've been able to do that in Korean. So that was pretty cool. That was like my first like really cool output experience. How about you?
Well, I mean, obviously, I've already discussed my first experience, at school, in another episode. But yeah, probably the best output experience was obviously the Wakgood experience. Actually using my Korean to speak to celebrities. There was another time where where I met ITZY, the idol group, but we're hopefully going to do a whole nother video on that, so I'm not going to spoil.
But yeah, just letting you guys know.
But honestly, every day living here in Korea now is just an output day. So
as for like
all my
your average day,
my output experiences at this rate, yeah.
Yeah.
So if I wanted to give some sort of particular ones, I think that if you either make it to Korea or even in your home country, if you can join some sort of group, like for example, for me, longboarding is a group where I've made friends in Korean. That's probably going to be the most precious experience for the viewers out there. I mean, speaking the language is all like a very precious thing in itself, but there comes a time and a place where you feel sort of quite astonished by the fact that you can speak another language, and that comes when you're in some sort of group or having a conversation with more than one person. I think, at least for me personally. Yeah.
When was that moment where you were like, dang, I can like speak Korean? When was that? When did you feel that? Do you remember?
Yeah, so that was, I mean, the Wakgood thing was good, but particularly when I first sort of entered like the longboarding group, and all these other people literally had no idea. Well, obviously most Korean speakers are not exactly fluent in English, but there was a sort of moment where I had to explain something to someone, and I didn't feel like I was speaking a foreign language kind of thing. That was like really, so what I was actually explaining was like a trick. In English, it might be like 180, like a 180 pivot. And I was trying to explain what it was to someone because they were like brand new. And yeah, I didn't have to like really think about it at all. When it kind of came out naturally, and that's where I felt beast mode. Felt really good about it. So
yeah, man. I mean, recently I finally was like, you know what, I need to start outputting. So for the past 2 weeks, I think I've done over 20 hours of like output in like the past 2 weeks
in the week, across the week.
Yeah, throughout the week. Yeah, like texting, and then I've been using a couple apps to like jump into like
apps
rooms where Korean people are speaking, and then like app recommendations.
Yeah.
So I can say number one, there's this app called Clubhouse. It's essentially like this conversation room kind of app where you can join rooms where Korean people are talking. And essentially, you can join and start listening, or you can talk yourself. And so I used Clubhouse. I've done it a couple times. But there's also this other app called, I think, Hi Cal. I'll probably put it on the screen what it actually
Okay.
is.
Yeah.
But essentially, it's similar to Clubhouse, but it's specific for only language learning. So
Is that
language learners
yeah.
are like on that app, and they're like practicing speaking in group rooms, and there's even some Korean instructors that
Oh
will
wow.
jump on
Is
and
that is
like
that are
talk.
these
You can
free
literally just,
apps as well? Like is it like paid class kind of thing, or is it kind of
oh
similar
no,
to
it's
Hello
not.
Talk with the random?
It's not paid.
It's
It's
not paid.
free.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's free. Clubhouse is free. I think it's called HiCal. That's also free. Um, Another app, obviously, Hello Talk. Hello Talk is probably the one app that we've
Everyone,
all,
yeah.
if you're language learning, you
You probably
probably have
already
heard
know
of
what
it.
that is, yeah.
Right. So
um,
Hello Talk, texting people, it's really easy to meet some new people, or at least find a new texting partner.
well, yeah.
I've been the last week I've been talking about NBA basketball in Korean with this one friend that I
Oh,
have.
yeah.
Like literally our entire conversations are just talking about the NBA playoffs, and I was surprising myself, like I'm able to talk about basketball in Korean. I was like, damn,
Yeah.
like wow, that's kind of cool. So yeah, I mean, after I like output, then I
Mm,
watched like some basketball YouTubers, and then I learned like more vocabulary. I'm like, okay, that's how I say that, and then I continue to practice that the next time I have conversations. So that's
mm,
the way I'm going about my
quite
output
like
right now.
strategic, yeah, compared to what I'm doing. At least
Oh yeah,
at the moment,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
With Hello Talk, obviously, I've met like loads of people on there.
Right.
Got had like all sorts of just different meetings off there, but I tend to not really stick to one topic. I'm always bouncing around different places, so perhaps
Mm,
your strategy might be better in terms. Well, I mean, I guess we'll kind of see.
mm,
But
mm,
my sort of thoughts on that are is if you're having one sort of topic and speaking to one person quite a lot about that topic, then your vocabulary in that sort of domain is going to improve.
mm.
Whereas I'm just sort of where it stands now, I'm just sort of getting loads of daily input and just sort of daily life topics, kind of
Mm. I have a
broadening my
question for you.
yeah. Mm.
Using Hello Talk, I mean, being in Korea, it must be like way easier because you're just
All
like,
the time
hey,
zone.
I'm in
Yeah.
Korea too. You want to meet? Like,
Yeah,
that's
literally,
the
that's
vibe
how
I
it
can
goes.
imagine.
I've probably met like
Yeah,
at least
yeah.
10 plus people on there.
Oh
Um,
damn.
some people, some people that only like one or two people have been like really weird, and then the rest are like fairly normal. So just your mileage may
Okay.
vary. And this isn't even
Okay.
this isn't advertisement for Hello Talk because there's also Tandem as well, which I used to use.
Mm.
This is before I came to Korea, but I met some friends off Tandem as well who are good,
Oh nice.
being good people. So that's another app I can vouch for. But this whole sort of like, it's called like Lenson, like random
Oh,
meeting apps.
right, right.
This kind
Online.
of
Yeah, yeah.
genre. You can get sort of different people with different goals or different ideas about how they're using it. So,
Mm.
there's dating because there's dating apps and then there's these apps, but obviously dating apps are like paid and a lot of
Ah.
you know competition on there, I suppose. Whereas a lot of people, like to use Hello Talk as language exchange, whereas
Right,
really
right, right.
you might be dating and stuff. So yeah, just
Yeah.
know
Well,
that when you're using them, that's a sort of a warning
there's a lot
label,
of folks that
or even
are
a
trying
plus
to.
if that's what you're into. Yeah,
They're
um,
not only language exchanging. There's some folks that are a
yeah,
little special when they use Hello Talk,
all
like
sorts
some
of
crazy
exchanges going
messages.
down in the Hello
Yeah,
Talk.
like, you'd be surprised. Like I was talking to this one girl, and she was asking
Yeah.
me like, "How do I get this guy away from me? He keeps saying these weird things." And I'm like, "What?" And she showed me the screenshots. This dude's like harassing her, and I'm like, "What's
Yeesh.
Why? Like, block
Mm,
him. Don't message him anymore."
yeah.
But yeah,
Mm,
yeah.
mm,
Hello
mm,
Talk
mm.
is a weird place. You guys got to be safe. You're on Hello
Indeed.
Talk, but for the
Indeed.
most part, you can make
Yeah.
some solid connections.
So we also had another question that we wanted to sort of talk about, and obviously in the emerging community, output is quite a sensitive topic. So I'm going to ask Adamola first what his thoughts are on early output and when other people should be outputting. What is the breakdown on that?
Yeah, that So in the immersion community, we
Mm.
all know, at least for those of us that have been around for like the uprisings of Refold and
Oh god, yeah.
overall the entire discussion of output, the overall consensus in the community is early output is a sin, or at least that's what it has been over the past like year and a half. People that mentioned, "Oh, I'm early outputting," people would like scold them
Mm.
and say, "No, why are you outputting? Your accent's gonna be crap." Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, yeah,
So
exactly.
Overall, what I'll say is in the beginning, I was very much so, at least the way I thought about output, I was like, okay, in the beginning, input is the most important thing to language acquisition. We
Hmm.
must receive input to then develop our brain's machine of the
Yeah,
language
like
so that our brain
comprehensibility.
can,
Yeah,
yeah, exactly, we
competence. I think that's what
comprehend
like
more. And then
that's
eventually our brain starts to get very used to the same patterns because we've heard them 1,000, 2,000, thousands, hundreds of times. And after that, then our brains allow us to create the sounds. And we can hear ourselves. Being able to
mm,
hear ourselves with the language, hear
mm,
our errors in the language is the most important thing to being able to correct yourself, not being bad at speaking the language. Because in the
yeah,
beginning, if you can't hear yourself, you can't correct yourself, right?
that's true. Yeah,
So in the beginning, that's what I was thinking. And I still to this day, I don't regret not outputting until now. So it's been about,
right.
well, I guess I had outputted a little times, like I mentioned, when I did
Here
that
and there.
Migaku
I mean,
introduction
it's
to
kind of impossible
the
not
Korean
to.
people.
Mm,
Right. So like I did output, but not like super consistently. It was like, oh, once in a while. Oh, here. Oh, I'm speaking Korean, helping a Korean person out. Or, oh, I saw a Korean person, so I said something. Like
mm.
those kind of things. I don't consider that like me starting output, but in a
Yeah,
way, I guess some people would say that. If you think it's output,
yeah.
then
No,
maybe it is.
we're not going to consider that under our definition at least
Right.
for today. So yeah,
Right.
I can scrap that. Mm,
But what do you think, George? Because like for the most
yeah.
part, the beginning it was always like, let's make sure we focus on input, and
Mm,
I think that was the best decision I could have made
mm,
because
mm, mm,
now output is coming to me like very smoothly, like very
mm-hmm,
little like
hmm.
things I'm editing in my speech besides
Right.
when I'm trying to correct my errors. How about yourself?
Yeah, so obviously with you, I've known that you're very sort of you wanted to follow it to the core and take input, to its fullest, and have like a sort of 2 year or so period where you had input and then output would just sort of be the next goal from there, right? So the third year would be
Yeah.
your output year, is basically what you've
Right.
been saying. Um, with me, I've never really worried about it that much. I think the whole approach to learning Korean has always just been quite not lazy in a way, but
Mm,
less. The more pressure
that's
I put on myself, the less I get out of it.
mm,
Particularly with like stat tracking, which I had an attempt at,
ooh,
which it worked for me.
right. Mm,
My approach has been very less sort of goal focused and more just sort of kind of doing what I feel like. But for some reason, when I do what I feel like, I'm able to like put in way more hours of focus than it
mm,
seems most people. Like it seems like most people need some sort of whip or some or something pushing them right
right.
to make them
Right.
focus every
Right.
day. Whereas I haven't had that. So my sort of approach with output then is mainly as of recently I've just been outputting all the time, but my
Mm,
overall sort of approach was kind of similar to Adamona's, where I would be like, well, there's no point actually outputting
mm,
unless I have to. And for the
right.
first sort of year, I tried to purposely not speak, even if there was a particular moment where I could. So
Mm,
aside from maybe ordering at a Korean restaurant, maybe if there was like a Korean conversation happening on the bus or whatever, I
oh
would have
yeah.
been able to take part in it. I purposely made sure I didn't, or I purposely made
Mm,
sure that I didn't go out of my way to use it. And
mm,
then during the second year, I kind of gave up with that mindset because I just wasn't really.
right.
I felt the sort of need to actually use the language for it to be interesting again. It was
Mm,
more of an interest thing rather than an actual like
right.
perfectionism. And obviously, and around that time, videos came out in the community saying that well, actually,
Mm,
early output isn't even that bad. People like Aussie Man,
mm, right.
not the radio presenter, the other guy, Japanese
And
learner. He,
the way that I
yeah,
think now
his
is
videos are
like
brilliant.
after you got a year of input, like
Mm,
after a year of solid input, like you
mm,
can tell to yourself, like when you listen to Korean, if your ear after a year, your ear can start to really pick up on the sounds and you can start to
mm,
hear yourself. I think after a
yeah.
year output, I mean, I wouldn't say you
Well,
have to wait till a year to output,
yeah,
but I'd
because
say
everyone's
a
year is
year's
different.
worth of
Yeah.
immersion definitely is enough to like tell yourself, okay, I can start speaking and like at least start pushing self. But obviously, when you start speaking, the one thing that can't change is input. Input
Mhm.
is something you still have to get,
Yeah.
whether you're talking to someone, listening to them
You never
speak, or whether
improve
you're watching a
through
show.
speaking. That doesn't really happen.
Exactly.
I mean, you might become more
Your
confident at
muscles, your muscles
speaking,
will get more comfortable,
but yeah,
right?
you won't improve your actual language ability
Mm.
you just improve your sort of comfortability, if that makes sense. You can't learn
Right,
through
right.
speaking as you can learn through like reading a book
Right.
or something like that. Mm.
And wait, there's something I wanted to mention with you
Yeah.
because the way that I remember meeting you
Mhm.
was through Jungin, and
Oh
Jungin
yeah, yeah,
interviewed you, and you did the interview in Korean. So
yeah.
you did that interview, and then you had another interview. I think was it a year after,
Six
and I think you were
months.
in
Yeah, six
Korea.
months after.
6 months, 6 months, and then you did it again. I was like, "Yo, you improved so much from that first interview to like the second."
Definitely,
Uh,
definitely did.
like, how did you feel like that
Mm.
first time versus the second time? Like,
Yeah, watching back the first one is quite cringy to watch back now, obviously. Even
yeah.
the second one's a little bit like the second one's all right. It's not bad, but there's a
Mhm.
little bit where I'm like, oh wow, like why didn't I just say this? Why didn't I just say that?
Mm.
Um, and particularly the first one, when I did that, I was thinking like, oh wow, like I basically got this Korean thing sorted. I'm so good.
Mm.
And then by the time the second interview came around, I was way more sort of Kyomson, like
More
wow, where's
humble.
the word for like respectful
Right.
or
Mm.
calm about it, and wasn't boasting. I was quite sort of like, well, I've made it this far, that's cool, but I could do way
Obviously,
better.
right.
But yeah, as for feelings, it was quite a big jump. Yeah, as you said,
Mm.
like it was really quite a big jump. So it kind of
Yeah.
made me wonder what is actually the right thing. Outputting those, inputting those, this kind of
And
debate.
between those periods, like
Yeah.
from that point where you did the first interview
Mm.
until the second interview, what did you do in that period? Was it a lot of output or was it input?
Yeah,
What was the
it still wouldn't have been an awful lot of output, but what I did change was I changed actually speaking in games. So I used to play a game called
Hmm.
Black Desert during that time, and in
Right.
Black Desert there's like like guild feature where basically you just talk to other people. But what you
Mm.
can do, you can either just use text chat or you can use voice chat. And what I used to do beforehand was just sit in the voice chat but not actually speak with. I just have my mic on mute. But
Oh,
then after that
gotcha.
6 month period, I would actively try and speak. Like if there was something I was curious about, I wouldn't just what I did before was just search it on my own or try and figure it out on my own. I'd
Ah, you
actually
asked
ask
people.
someone,
Oh,
and
cool.
it was quite hard because I didn't actually. There's a lot of times where I didn't understand the people because most of the people I was playing with
Mm.
were from like different parts of Korea, so they had lots of
Oh,
dialect thrown
right.
in, and it was
Oh, okay.
particularly tough. But I kept pushing through with that, and I think that's what might have made the difference.
Oh,
Um,
that's tough.
it
I
was a
didn't
few
know
hours a
that. That's
week.
awesome.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now that I think, because again, I never really was like, oh yeah, I need to do 3 hours a week of like this practice. I just
Mm,
kind of
right.
did it when I felt like it, which made it more possible for me. Um,
Input
so
wise, did you change anything that you were watching in that period by any
yeah,
chance?
with other input, I think I probably actually did less passive. I think
Oh,
surprisingly, because before like the first year, I was passiving like almost 24/7,
oh, really?
and then
Damn.
around that time, I didn't won't say fell off, but I just stopped getting enjoyment out of it because I could already understand quite a lot of it. It was kind of tedious to
Right,
have
right.
on.
Oh,
Whereas in the
gotcha.
beginning, it's complete gibberish, so it just doesn't really matter whether it's
Right,
there or not,
right,
right?
right, right.
Um,
Yeah,
so,
that's the
but
thing
in
about
terms of other
passive.
input, no, I didn't
Yeah.
change from what I
Oh,
remember.
that's nice though.
Yeah,
Yeah, because
yeah,
for me, I felt like passive was what was always keeping me in like that sense that okay, I can understand Korean even when I'm not paying attention. I'm like,
yeah,
hell yeah! Like
yeah.
it was that feeling that passive could give me. It was like
And
every
that
time like random
changes
Koreans.
when you come to Korea. You don't really need. I mean, I'm not gonna say you don't need
Right,
passive. Do what you
right,
want, but
right.
you don't really need as much passive because it's everywhere. And you're always hearing people
You
talk
can
and stuff.
talk to anyone on the street. You can get immediate active input just by talking to someone.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is what it is.
Well, I think what's quite something I wanted to ask you at least was
Mm,
there's the sort of two types of people. So there's one type of person, sort of similar to yourself. Well, okay, I guess I won't say similar to yourself, but people who get loads of input for like 2 3 years and then go
mhm,
outputting. Um, and then there's people who just kind of speak not necessarily from day one, but get enough input, maybe 6 months to a year, and then are outputting sort of from that point. And
mhm.
in terms of the people we know in the community, are there any sort of people you think were actually the person who outputted earlier had better results? Is there anyone you might think of, or because I'm
Hmm.
curious to hear your
Oh
opinion on
yeah.
what the difference on the results are, because there's very mixed views on this at the moment.
Yeah, right
Hot topic.
now, so obviously when this immersion input method,
Yeah.
like people started doing it, right now, a lot of people are currently in that stage. of input. Most people that I know are still in that stage of input. The
Yeah,
people that
it's
I
just
do know, at least,
depends when you
right,
start, it's right.
right, depends where you start, right? But one person in particular that has been outputting from pretty much the start, from my understanding, you
Mm.
know, Giga Chad,
Oh yeah.
and she's currently studying Korea now. She started output pretty early, and she's probably one of the best people in the server, at least coming to Korean wise. Her speaking abilities and overall, she's one of the most successful individuals from the server.
When you say the
Besides
server,
her,
you mean the Refold server?
yeah, I'm talking about the Refold's Korean
Right,
server.
right. Yeah, the
Um,
original sort of methods.
when we're
Yeah.
talking about other learners, there's a couple other learners that come to my mind, but those individuals, I believe, they live in Korea. So
Ah,
that in
th-
itself is
that's a sort of a
another
public
form of
version.
immersion in itself, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so,
I wouldn't necessarily discredit them though.
right, that's true.
Hmm.
You still need to really learn
I
if
need
you want
to
to learn
immerse, like,
Korean.
'cause
Doesn't
that
matter.
was the whole sort of, on the age out just saying where I remember one of the articles. It was like, how come people live in Japan and
Like
don't know
30
any words
years,
Japanese and they speak English? And his response was like,
right,
they're not living in Japan, they're living in America because they just
right.
consume so much English throughout the day, right?
It's all
Yeah.
about the environment you have around yourself, the people you
Mm-mm-mm.
hang out with, the media you consume. If you don't actually change it, you'll never learn a language. That's the most important thing. You got to change your mindset to
That is the
really
philosophy,
get
really.
into involving in the language. Yeah, it's
Mm-mm-mm.
definitely.
But yeah, I wouldn't
That's about it.
discredit people who, yeah, lived in Korea
That's a
per
good
se.
point. You're
Yeah.
right. You're right about that.
Yeah.
That's good because most people we know, all foreigners that live in Korea are not great at Korean.
Yeah.
We know that. We know that very well. Not everyone that lives there is amazing, which is one of the cool things I think with immersion, because it's
Mm.
like we didn't have. You don't need to live in the country to learn. You don't need to live in the country to output. There's
The only
so
requirement is
many
internet,
great
yeah.
resources.
Yeah.
There's so many great resources online, classes, tools. The internet has allowed us to learn languages so easily. It's like a blessing in itself, you know?
What do you think? Like, do you think there's like going to be a future of this? Like, because at the moment it's sort of in the stage where there's mixed opinions on, oh, well, you should output like this or you should input like this.
Mm,
Do you think there's going to be like a future
mm,
where our way of learning is kind of like, well, I mean, it is already proven, but it
right.
becomes mainstream basically, because that looks like
You
where it's
know,
heading, but you can't really say for sure. But I just wondering if you thought there was any sort of way that it could become more mainstream, because I've had lots of times where I've had to explain to other people, and they'll be like,
mm,
"Oh yeah, that's cool, but like, don't you forget your native language?" Or "That's too hard," or
mm,
they kind of quite easily dismiss it. When
right,
I mean, I'm quite passionate
right.
about it, so obviously I could just be,
Yeah, you know, the
you know what I
thing
mean?
about input, it for
Mm-mm-mm.
us, it's like red pill, blue
Yeah,
pill. It's like
yeah,
we
it
took
really
the
is.
red pill. We took the red pill,
Yeah,
and
we
that's
took
why we're
the
here. Like that's why we're here. But I guess the concept of making something mainstream, we need to
Mm.
make this red pill, which seems so like
Yeah,
crazy, insane. Why are you doing that? Oh,
yeah.
what is that?
Oh,
Actually, we need to take this red pill, which is immersion learning, and we have to transition it to something that is approachable for everyone. I think the most important thing in how I've reached this point is the hardcore mindset I had. I
yeah,
think hardcore will get you very good,
yeah.
is the thing.
I
But
can vouch
the
for
thing
that.
is,
Yeah. Mm.
input in itself is the one thing people need to understand is most important. Most people think Duolingo, practicing that Duolingo every single day, is going to get them fluent. But what we need to transfer is Duolingo, instead of people thinking that, we need people to think watching content in the language, watching
Mm.
shows, trying to learn how to read the language. If people start trying to do those things more and more instead of practicing their keeping their Duolingo streak every day,
So based.
then people would really see improvements in their language acquisition. I think if that's what we can get, but that's tough because
Mm.
we
But how
very
do we
much
get there?
know
Yeah.
most people like Duolingo. So we need
Yeah.
to make immersion more fun. How can we make
Mm.
immersion fun? And that comes from comprehensible input that's approachable for the average individual,
Mm,
which,
mm, mm, mm.
as we know, comprehensible input, it's very much an individual, how an individual feels connected to the media.
Yeah. You can't just say
And
this is fun, this isn't fun. Like, it's all up to you, because
right,
even in your native language, you're gonna have sort of your biases about what you prefer.
right,
Mm.
right. Yeah. Which is why it's important to watch the stuff that you enjoy. For me, I
Yeah.
love the NBA. Before, I didn't watch
Mm,
any basketball content in Korean. But then I was like, you know what? Why haven't I done this? I looked for a couple of basketball channels, and now I've been like binge watching these channels
mm,
like videos on YouTube
mm,
because I love basketball. So of course I'm gonna watch more. Like it
mm.
doesn't even matter that it's
Yeah.
Korean. It's like I like it's Korean. So now I'm getting more input, more input, more input. So
But
now
yeah,
my brain's understanding.
getting back on topic with that is also there's no real one way to learn. There's no real one path where it's like, oh,
Hmm.
you need to do this much input, this much output, and then you'll
Right.
get there. Well, where
Right.
is there, first of all? And second of
Right.
all,
Right.
second of all, everyone's interest is different. So for me, I love
Mm.
reading and I read for like hours, but and I might be like, well, reading's actually way more effective because this and that, but there is no
Hmm.
actual real effective method for one
Right.
person because it's not a one size fits all kind of thing. It's
Exactly.
very. I mean, you can say the few things you can say for sure is the more you do, the better you'll get, and the more engaged you are, the better you'll get. And with output, there's still that sort of line of like when it might be more effective because there's still no hard sort of, as far
Mm.
as I'm aware, concrete evidence of when you should be doing it. At least
Right.
after you've gotten some input, there's no real sort of line on that.
Yeah.
And I think with that said, perhaps there isn't one. Perhaps there really isn't a sort of. Perhaps some people need more practice at output. Some people need less. There could be that element to it as well, but it's still kind of undecided. And we've tried to sort of break down what we personally think is right
Mm.
with this method. But at the end of the day, I think drawing a one conclusion saying you should do it like this, it's
Mm.
not going to work for everyone. I think as long as you're hardcore, then you'll get there anyway. When I say get there, I'm talking about you'll get pretty fluent pretty
Where is
quickly.
there?
But
Where is
where is
there,
there?
George?
Where is
Where is
there?
there?
Ooh.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for watching to the end. Please, if you enjoyed, make sure you like and subscribe for more episodes in the future. All right. What do we got next, George? What are we thinking? What are we thinking?
Well, yeah. See, that's the thing. We haven't. We don't really want to spoil too much, but there could
Mhm.
be potential stories about things that I've done in Korea. Adamola said he wanted to interview me about certain topics,
Mhm.
and going forward, we'd like to discuss more things with our sort of subscribers and our fan base using our Discord. So if you guys haven't already, please do check out our Discord if you're interested. You can
Most
post,
definitely.
comments and questions in there. Otherwise, that is pretty much all we have to say for this video. Thank you very much for watching this time, and we'll see you in our next video, whenever that may be. Probably next week. All right.
Peace out.
See you later. Thank you very much, guys. Goodbye.